9 times out of 10, somebody that uses a Hyperion is going to look like this. Either using Storm Armor or Aurora. After all, the whole point of using armor when using a Hyperion is to provide more intelligence. Without intelligence, the Hyperion is not usable. Therefore, wouldn't it be a bit silly if you were to use a Hyperion and not to use either Storm or Aurora armor? After all, these two armor sets provide the most intelligence more than any other armor set. I mean, the literal dedicated mage sets. How about you use Crimson armor for mage? Yeah, that does sound absolutely insane and a little bit brain dead. When you think about it, it actually might be cracked. Now, of course we know when we're using Crimson armor, if you hit a mob, the swipe ability hits twice. As you can see, it's kind of hard to tell, but we're doing essentially double damage. Well, it's not quite double, but it's near enough. Now, I admittedly have never tried this before, but that swipe ability supposedly works with mage damage, so magical damage. What I mean by that is if we optimize our Crimson set towards intelligence, in theory we could deal a lot of damage with the Hyperion. So at the moment I don't have a good Aurora set at the moment. To be completely honest, I only bought this set to actually wear it in the video at the start. So we're going to do some damage testing. First of all, just using Storm and Wither Goggles, considering, well, it's going to be better than this Aurora set. The pet we're going to be using is Sheep. We're just going to keep it consistent. Golden Dragon might do a little bit more damage, but we're going to need more intelligence when we move on to Crimson. Our accessories are unsighted, and we've got our tuning set to intelligence. We've got two rather terrible pieces of equipment in our Implosion Belt and our Gauntlet of Contagion. Their abilities are still the same anyway. However, the damage we deal to pretty much anything is going to be around about 1.65 million. Obviously that's going to be really fairly consistent. Something else to mention is, of course, because Crimson isn't dungeonizable, this setup is only really truly useful for probably in the Crimson Isles. You see, there isn't really any other island where you're consistently going to need to be doing so much damage to a point where you're even going to need to do more than like 1.5 million damage per hit. And obviously in dungeons, the damage is scaled anyway, so it's kind of a little bit irrelevant. Now, before you go any further, you should subscribe to the channel, become part of the 24%. Also, you should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of every single video. Now, we're going to devise our Crimson set. Now, really to get the swipe ability to work, we only really need 2 pieces. So we might change this around a little bit, but we're going to go for the chest plate, the leggings, and then we're going to go for Wither Goggles and Storm Boots. It's a bit of an odd combination, but it's pointless. I mean, I have Terror Boots, I mean, it's pointless using them. But that's still going to provide us 2 pieces of Crimson, and then hopefully a decent amount of mana from our boots, and then also our Wither Goggles. This just looks like the wackiest setup. But of course, at the moment, both our pieces are ancient, so we need to change these both to necrotic, which is honestly just a little bit odd to do. Okay, so we have our 2 pieces of necrotic Crimson. Now, with our full Storm set, we were getting around about 4.7k mana, and surprisingly, we only lost 500 mana. Okay, so when we do a little bit of damage testing, we do around about 1.45 million damage, which means we've lost in one hit damage around about 200k. But of course, we can't really tell if this swipe ability is properly working on mobs that we can one-hit. However, hopefully this might shed a bit more light. 2.1 million, 2.3 million, 2.6 million. See, the issue is I still can't properly tell if that swipe ability is working. Honestly, I think the only reason why we did more damage then, stupidly, was just because I already hooked it with the, I forgot what it's called, the Moody Grapple Shot. When we actually just hit a regular mob, I'm not sure whether it's actually doing anything. Okay, so against Flurs, this seems to be really strong. We seem to just drop them pretty much instantly. Now, that's not ideal. And honestly, if we just look through the chat, the damage figures are not even that high. Okay, maybe I'm missing something. Okay, it is definitely working. As you can see, there's 2 damage figures if you look carefully when we actually hit. We try it again. Yeah, it's definitely working. So that's really cool. As you can, we did almost over 3.5 million damage then in one hit. It doesn't show it in the chat because, of course, it's literally just showing the raw damage, but not really the swipe damage. But it definitely is working, which is really cool, and that's probably why we're able to kill things much quicker. Now, for comparison, if we just simply use our Storm setup, we do about 1.5 million damage, but of course there's no swipe ability. Okay, I knew in theory this was going to work, but I've never really tried it, and at the same time I'm a little bit surprised that it works so well. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed. Now, of course, the only downside is you do lose a little bit of mana. 4.2k with this setup, and then 4.8 with the Storm setup. Now, something to mention is that these two pieces of Crimson, obviously, they haven't got attributes on that would sort of benefit a mage setup. Considering they have Dominance and Veteran, neither of them granting any sort of assistance towards regenerating mana or anything like that. So really, the play is if you had Veteran mana regen, maybe, or Veteran mana pool, either one, maybe that would be even better. Although, I don't know if I'm willing to spend the money on that. Of course, if you have good Aurora as well, you'd be better off using Aurora boots. Wither Goggles I think is still a pretty solid choice though. But one more thing, of course the swipe ability on Crimson isn't really listed in the armor. Well, it is, but it doesn't outline that it will double hit essentially. I've just realised, can we actually put Sapphire Gemstones? Why can I not type X? Can we put Sapphire Gemstones on this? Okay. Because if we can, then I've been being rather silly. We can. Okay. Okay. We in theory should have a little bit more mana now, so let's just double check. Well, I know it's true, because otherwise, how can it not be? Okay, so each piece is now giving us 24 more intelligence. Of course, we could get slightly more if we were to put perfects on there. Don't really fancy paying the best part of 100 mil though. Yeah, it doesn't even quite take us to 4.3k mana, and it's not going to make a big difference. But yeah, the swipe ability still works, and not really a whole lot changes. Anyway, as I was saying before, in terms of the essential double damage situation with the Crimson, it's not going to be fixed at some point, because it's not outlined, and it obviously it's pretty much been a part of Crimson armor since it's released. I don't know, it always confuses me. I've got to say that initially I was quite unsure as to whether this was even going to work, considering the Hyperion deals magical damage. And of course it does. Now, here are the facts. With this setup, in comparison to the equivalent like Storm Armor or something like that, maybe if you have really top tier Aurora, then you're going to be dealing more damage and the damage difference is going to be less. However, with my setup, I seem to be dealing around about 45 to 50% more damage using the half Crimson set. Of course, because of the Crimson's ability. At the same time, we did lose around about 600 mana. Which, yeah, it is not ideal. It's around about 10 to 15% less mana. Now, of course, if you use your Crimson setup just purely for this purpose, then you could go ahead and get like mana pool or mana regen on there. It will be an interesting setup, but it would definitely work. Of course, you would then have the edge over something like Storm, considering you can't put attributes on there. But at the same time, Aurora, you can put attributes on. You could put both mana regen and mana pool. But I guess the big question is, what is this setup really used for? Considering things like Kudra is not really practical or ideal for, to be honest. Like, yes, you would deal a bit more damage, but do you really need to deal more damage? Realistically, anything that takes magical damage and has a lot of HP would get melted by this setup. Hence why it's so good for just killing the mobs in the Crimson Isles, because the majority of them have so much HP. For instance, things like Flares. I don't know, let me know what you think of this setup in the comments. And also, I will say, there's probably a lot more uses than what I've outlined. But anyway, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.
Let's go.